Hey folks, it's Fernando doing a video for the More Survivalists, and today we're taking a look at the Schrade SCHF38, which is this knife that I have here. Now this is more of a budget knife. Usually I like, maybe a little bit more expensive blades, like the bussy knives, that sort of thing. But there's something to be said about budget-oriented blades. Maybe you don't want to be spending a lot of money. Maybe you're more on a tighter budget, but you need a quality knife for your kit. This is definitely a good way to go. Let me say that up front. If it wasn't a good option, I wouldn't even be wasting my time or yours with it. So in our box we see something that I like. You have a complete kit in terms of a knife with an actual sheath. Now that's something that you don't get with many knives, including many more expensive knives. Bussy, no sheath, you have to procure those yourself. So that's already a plus. Besides that, it comes with a sheath. This is a ballistic nylon sheath that has a pocket, and in that pocket you have a very decent ferro rod for fire starting. Again, if you're on a tight budget, or maybe even starting your survival preps and you don't have some of this stuff, you already are getting that pretty much for free included. And yeah, it does work it's a very decent ferro rod, the one you get with the Schrade SCHF38. You also get a sharpening stone. Again, things that if starting you wouldn't have in your kit, and if you do, you have spares here. It's well, it's not a sharpening stone, it's a diamond coated sharpener with the Schrade logo there. I'm getting this, yeah, there it is. So you get these two already. You have your warranty, which does not include any abuse beyond the intended use of a cutting tool. Guys, this is a $40 knife, right? So you have to keep that in mind. And then the blade itself. This knife is the SCHF38 is also listed as the Frontier knife, and the Frontier knife is actually quite accurate description, because this is a typical Frontier knife blade shape. I actually quite like it because it has a nice big belly, continuously curving to the very narrow tip, stabs very nicely, and being as thick as it is, there's really a rather low risk of breaking this tip. Okay, so very good, clever blade geometry. A little bit more of an issue here in the handle. We're going to be getting into there in a second. So what we have is I have my little cheat list over here. It's 1095 carbon steel, which is quite decent. It's a very good carbon steel. You have it in much more expensive knives as well, and maybe knives that cost double what this one costs. You have 1095 steel. Maybe it's not heat treated to the maximum hardness, but I'm okay with that because I'd rather take toughness over edge retention. That's the way I see it, and I think they're smart to do that here as well, because in a survival knife, toughness is, in my opinion, more important. It's a quite thick blade, and some of the knife snobs out there may make jokes about the sharpened pry bar thing. Well, you know what? A survival blade should be leaning heavily towards that sharpened pry bar geometry of blade, because it has to be your pry bar, your hammer, your shovel. It has to be able to do all those things beyond simply being just a mere cutting tool. Now, the better it balances being a sharpened pry bar with being an actual useful sharp blade, that's where the genius of a very good blade design is. So those are all things to keep in mind. It's a powder coated blade. I'm not a fan of this powder coating thing. It gets dirty very fast. It has a lot of traction, and you don't want that when cutting through material. You're going to be batoning, you're going to be cutting through wood. You want the least amount of traction in the blade finish. Very typical though, you do have it in your bussy knife as well, and some of them, actually the battle grade finish ones, will have something somewhat similar. Now the thing is that it wasn't always the case, because Schrade actually in their SCHF9 had a much nicer coating which has almost no friction. I actually love this freaking finish here. It's great. Yes, it does wear off and you have a little bit of rust here and there, no big deal. The coating though is better. Even the sheath, since we're talking about the SCHF9, the sheath was actually better. Notice the ballistic nylon finish here and here. These two fabrics, this one is higher quality. The older one, this one with this larger thread is not as good quality. The pouch was also removable, and you had MOLLE there in the back, not anymore. So a little bit more. And again, yes, $40, you actually have to repeat that to yourself many times. So we have a 5.7-inch blade, very, pretty large, and I think it's a good length for still a compact knife that actually packs a bit of a punch, especially when it comes to chopping. And we have a 5.38-inch handle, and this is a ring texture TPE handle, like a rubber sort of material, weighing about 14 ounces or so. Now the thing is, the handle has some of the most stupid, I mean, this would be the epitome of how ridiculous things can get with YouTube. Clearly Schrade listens to what's being said in YouTube, and at a point everything was about jimping, and the more jimping things had, I mean, it got beyond stupid. And this would be the the top of that madness. Jimping, freaking everywhere, making no sense whatsoever. This handle would actually be much better without these sharp edges all over. I mean, here it makes no sense whatsoever. Yes, at a time, many years ago, some of the knives that I had some marks there for a little bit of thumb traction. I mean, even with the finish being so having so much traction, the finish, this powder coating finish itself has enough traction. You don't even need to add this. They should have avoided this step entirely, which has a cost. So makes no sense whatsoever, other than just pleasing some of the crowd out there. I know in knives and tools enough to know that if you're going to be using this knife frequently, often, this is going to be a problem. If you're going to be using it every once in a while, randomly, not an issue. But a knife, it should not be used with gloves. I mean, it should not be required to be wearing gloves when using a knife. Now, since we're talking about other options, and without going into bossy type of prices, you do have some other options as well. I mean, a good competitive option, and I'm going to be leaving the link for the Schrade and for this one as well. This is the Becker BK7 $40 knife, $80 knife. So it's twice the price. The sheath is still a nylon sheath, better construction, a little bit too large, yeah, maybe, but it's better in terms of quality. These are quite decent in general because you have a solid plastic insert that keeps the blade from cutting through. But we have better finishes. Instead of being made in Asia, God knows where, the BK7 is made in the United States. You have more attention to detail, finer finish. There's no sharp edges. The handle is, of course, better, much more comfortable for small, medium, or large hands. The handles are famously good in the BK7. Now, notice one thing, and this is also 1095 steel, 1095 carbon steel. Now, very sharp because of the angle of the grind that you have, but comparing the two tips, you see that difference. This is going to be the cheaper knife, the Schrade, is going to be tougher, stronger. It's going to be taking more abuse in that tip. Maybe the Becker is going to be having a better heat treatment. It's going to be having more edge retention, but it is a more narrow blade nonetheless. So for the price, for $40, man, it is a very, very good deal. And if you can take care of these, this stupid thing here with that jimping, maybe make a scale that covers it yourself. I mean, even filling it up with epoxy, that would make a good do-it-yourself little project for a weekend. You may end up with a great knife. So in terms of sharpness, I'd say it's decent enough, not super sharp, but makes a few decent curls, especially for such a wide blade in wood. It's not the kind of edge that you would have in a Scandi grind, but cuts, makes nice curls for more careful. Carving, not a carving knife by any means, but you could get away with a little bit of it, especially if you put more of a, if you put a better angle on that grind. The tip, as we were talking about before, is very tough, and you have no problems drilling holes into wood. You have to chop with it, of course. It's more than adequate for that. Leaning a little bit on the back of the handle. And if you have to, this is pretty tough wood, pretty hard wood, but whacking on it. Again, giving how wide the knife is. No problem whatsoever. As you see, what I was talking about before, how dirty it really gets. If you're going to be using this same knife for other things, for preparing food and such, keeping it clean is going to be a little bit more of an issue. These wider blades usually dig in very nicely. It's the kind of thing that with and this wood is firewood, is very hard. I think it's olive, maybe. The kind of thing you would rarely get away with doing with a less tough knife. And there's little things you can do using wedges so as to split wood a little bit more easily. With if you happen to have a, let's suppose you have a smaller knife, you know, the proper technique would be using wedges so as to open up the wood and not busting your knife so much. And that's easy, so as to free the blade. Now with a knife like this, you can get away with abusing the knife much more. Of course, easier done without the camera in between your hands, but you see my point. Good blade for this sort of thing. Not ideal for more detailed work, but for tougher tasks, which is the idea here, yep, no problem. And after being hammered through wood, it still retains enough of an edge as to make nicer little curls pretty much across. Edge retention, still sharpening, still cutting through paper with somewhat of an ease. I'd say the heat treatment it's quite decent. 1095 carbon steel holds an edge rather well, and this is no exception. Now the typical thing you would be using a knife for, let's be honest, cutting up boxes, opening boxes and such, cutting cardboard, no problem there. Rips through it quite easily. Of course, same thing. You know, any of these bigger knives, if it has somewhat of a decent edge, we'll just make very short work of it. Same thing with leather. As you see, it does get quite dirty and it's not as easy to keep clean compared to other finishes, but this is typical of this type of powder coating used in most of these tactical knives. Other than that, really no complaint. You cannot find much of a better deal for the money. Still quite sharp, as you can appreciate. Folks, it's going to be all for now. I'm going to be leaving the links below in case you want to check these out in Amazon. Have a great day. See you on our next video.